Weed, pot, ganja, Mary Jane, whatever you call it, cannabis is one of the most widely used drugs on the planet. For centuries, it's been consumed for recreational, spiritual, and even medicinal purposes. But in recent years, the conversation around cannabis has shifted. Once vilified in the media and treated as a dangerous substance, it's now legal in many parts of the world, with debates swirling about its benefits and risks. I'm a substance use counselor with a decade of experience working with people with various addictions, including cannabis. I'm sure you've got some questions, so let's answer them. What exactly is cannabis? How does it affect your mind and body? And what should you know before lighting up? Let's dive in. Cannabis comes from the cannabis sativa or cannabis indica plants, and its primary psychoactive component is THC, short for delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. THC is what gives users that signature high feeling, and it does this by interacting with your brain's endocannabinoid system. This system plays a role in regulating mood, memory, appetite, and pain. When you smoke or ingest cannabis, THC binds to cannabinoid receptors in your brain and causes a range of effects, from euphoria and relaxation to altered perceptions and increased hunger, better known as the munchies. But not all cannabis experiences are the same. The effects you feel can depend on several factors, like how much THC is in the strain you're using, how you consume it, and even your own body's chemistry. For some, cannabis induces a mellow, carefree vibe. For others, especially if they use too much or have a low tolerance, it can lead to anxiety, paranoia, or even full-blown panic attacks. There's also more to cannabis than just THC. Another major compound you've probably heard of is CBD. Unlike THC, CBD doesn't get you high. Instead, it's known for its potential therapeutic benefits like reducing pain, inflammation, and anxiety. So as a result, CBD products like oils, gummies, and lotions have exploded in popularity, especially among people who want relief without the psychoactive effects. Now, how exactly is cannabis consumed? Smoking a joint is probably the most iconic method, but that's far from the only way. People vape it, cook it into edibles, and even use tinctures or oils under the tongue. Each method has a different impact on how quickly you feel the effects and how intense the experience is. Smoking or vaping tends to hit fast, usually within minutes, while edibles can take up to an hour or more to kick in, but the high lasts longer and can be much stronger. However, cannabis isn't without its risks. One of the biggest concerns is the potential for dependency. Cannabis is not as addictive as substances like cocaine or heroin, but it's still possible to develop a psychological reliance on weed. Some users find themselves needing cannabis to help them relax, sleep, or cope with stress, which can lead to overuse. This is known as cannabis use disorder, and it affects an estimated 1 in 10 users. Withdrawal symptoms are usually mild, but it can include irritability, insomnia, and a loss of appetite. Cannabis can also impact your cognitive abilities, especially in young people whose brains are still developing. Research shows that heavy cannabis use, particularly in teenagers and young adults, can lead to issues with memory, learning, and attention. The developing brain is more vulnerable to THC's effects, which is why experts recommend waiting until adulthood to start using cannabis regularly, if at all. And then there's the question of mental health. For some people, especially those with predispositions to mental illness, cannabis can actually worsen conditions like depression, anxiety, or even trigger psychosis in extreme cases. The link between cannabis and mental health is a complex one, and researchers are still figuring out exactly how and why these reactions happen. But if you're someone who has a history of mental health struggles, it's something to keep in mind. On the other hand, many people find that cannabis helps with their mental well-being. It's used by millions to alleviate stress, relax after a long day, or ease social anxiety. Medicinal cannabis has also gained traction for treating conditions like chronic pain, PTSD, and even symptoms of epilepsy. But more research needs to be done in order to understand the effects of medicinal cannabis on all of these conditions. Now, let's talk about the history. Cannabis has a long and rich history that dates back thousands of years. The plant was first used as a fiber in ancient China around 10,000 years ago. But it wasn't long before its medicinal and psychoactive properties were discovered. Ancient cultures, from the Egyptians to the Greeks and Romans, used cannabis in religious ceremonies to treat various ailments and even as a way to induce relaxation. In India, cannabis was considered a sacred plant and was used in spiritual rituals to honor the gods, particularly in the form of a drink called bhang, made from ground cannabis leaves, milk, and spices. The plant eventually made its way to the Americas through the Spanish and Portuguese during the 16th century. Hemp, the non-psychoactive variety of cannabis, was grown for industrial purposes such as making rope, sails, and clothing. But it wasn't until the early 20th century that cannabis became associated with recreational use in the US. The plant was criminalized in the 1930s during a time of intense fear-mongering and propaganda, which culminated in the reefer madness era. Today, after decades of being banned and stigmatized, cannabis is undergoing a renaissance as more people recognize its potential benefits and push for legal reforms worldwide. Now, let's talk legality. Depending on where you live, the rules around cannabis can vary widely. In places like Canada, some US states, Uruguay, and many others across the world, cannabis is legal for both medical and recreational use. But in other parts of the world, it remains illegal and it can carry heavy penalties for possession or distribution. Even in areas where it is legal, there are usually really strict regulations about how much you can have, where you can buy it, and where you're allowed to consume it. The push for legalization often centers around the argument that cannabis is safer than other legal substances like alcohol or tobacco. And there's some truth to that. Cannabis is much less likely to lead to life-threatening overdoses, and it doesn't cause the same kind of long-term damage to the heart and lungs that smoking cigarettes does. But that doesn't mean it's completely harmless. Frequent use can lead to lung problems, especially if you smoke it, and heavy use over a long time can impact mental health and cognitive function. In recent years, cannabis has also sparked debates about its impact on productivity. While some people claim it enhances their creativity and focus, others report feeling sluggish or less motivated after using it. Again, this comes down to individual body chemistry and how the brain interacts with THC. It's important for users, particularly those in professional or academic settings, to be mindful of how cannabis affects their productivity and mental clarity. The conversation around cannabis is ever-changing. As more places legalize it, we're learning more about both its potential benefits and its risks. For those who enjoy it recreationally, it's all about moderation and understanding how it affects you personally. For medical users, it can be a life-changing treatment. But like any substance, it's important to stay informed, be aware of your body's reactions, and use it responsibly. In the end, cannabis is a plant with a long history, a wide range of uses, and complex impact on the body and mind. Whether you're for or against it, there's no denying that its cultural and legal status is evolving. So if you're going to partake, do it with care and consideration, and always know what you're getting into. Don't forget to spread loving kindness to all beings around you and be the change you want to see in the world. Thanks. See you soon.